Marathon County Board of Supervisors to order, please. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing. Following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll have the reading of the notice, please.
The educational and annual meeting and budget hearing of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, composed of 38 members, will convene at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, on Thursday, November 2nd at 7 p.m. The agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you. And I'd like to request everyone please silence their cell phones or put them on vibrate as to not to be an interruption to the meeting, and I thank you for your compliance. And we'll proceed on to roll call, and I'd ask all the supervisors that please sign in. Thank you. And I'd like to acknowledge all of the visitors that we have here this evening, taking an active interest in the budget as it affects the programs that are delivered by Marathon County government to the citizens of Marathon County. And so we'll move on to public comment, even though we have a public hearing, so there's nobody here that has signed up for public comment. We do have individuals that have signed up for giving comment during the public hearing, and when we get to that, I'll be requesting those individuals and then also requesting anyone else that hasn't signed up. So we'll move on to an overview, item B, budget hearing, overview of the published budget by HR Finance Committee and Property Chairman Robinson. Supervisor Robinson, please.
Thank you, and I'm going to just highlight the process and where we are from the administrator's budget. But I would like to point out that on September 26th, the administrator presented to the board the 2024 budget. And that's his budget message is available online, and that county board meeting was recorded, and at minute 40 begins a discussion on the budget. But I'd just like to walk everyone through the process that we used to develop the budget. Back in April, we had a budget 101 for the board to familiarize themselves with the basics of the budget and going over some of the assumptions and historic practices and other things. In May, we talked about budget priorities, and in June voted on budget priorities and guidelines, and in later adopted budget assumptions relative to wage increases, insurance increases, et cetera. In July and August, the standing committees began a discussion of mandatory versus discretionary programs within each of the committee's jurisdictional area. We looked at fees and paying attention to what fees have been increased, how they whether they should be, and we did a 5-year overview on the department's budgets. In August, many of the committees also reviewed our relationship with nonprofit agencies that we funded in the past. That input was provided to the administrator, who incorporated those comments into his September 26th budget presentation and budget. Since then, the standing committees have been reviewing, and most of the committees, I think with the exception of Public Safety, which is meeting next week, have met and provided input into the budget. And the Human Resources Committee in October, authorized the publication of the budget with some minor amendments that I'll cover later. And they're still considering other amendments. Members of the county board can continue to provide those right up until the adoption. Today we have the public hearing. On November 6th, we asked that members try to get any amendments into the finance chair or finance. Well, you can send them to me or preferably to Lance and or Christie. And the finance committee will take them up on the 8th. And next Thursday, we will vote on the county board budget. There have been a number of changes from the administrator's proposed budget. Many of them have been corrections. Some of them have been re-estimates of revenue, and I'd like to just quickly highlight those. The clerk of courts, fees and legal costs. The legal costs were increased to $150,000, and the estimate of revenues associated with court fees was increased in a corresponding manner. Medical examiner's budget was modified to make adjustments downward to decrease overtime and decreasing spending on activity pay while increasing health insurance $20,000. In the facilities and capital management budget, we increased the water rates by $62,986. And in the highway department, there was an adjustment made to reflect the reestimate of the general transportation aids from the state of Wisconsin. Those revenues went down $116,972. But they re-estimated interest income because we're earning more to increase that by $50,000. And then we're also selling some equipment at $66,792. We still have a number of issues that are out, and supervisors have pushed forward a proposal to take a portion of the social improvement fund balance and apply that to debt service. We have a proposal to deal with sale of property and designating those sales to debt service. There's been a lot of discussion over the UW, I will always call it UWMC, but it's UW Stevens Point Wausau campus, and through some or talking to people, we had talked about whether changes needed to be made, but the number in the budget is fine, and that will allow us to work on the burner controls and the upgrade to the system. As of this morning, the infrastructure committee requested that Highway N be added to either the 2023 or 2024 capital improvement program because of it went from a rating of 58 to 35, which is below the 50, the level of 50, and therefore there's a need to replace that bridge. We're also looking at an amendment for the Sheriff's Training Resource Center to reflect a reestimate of cost of approximately $167,000 that will be funded through ARPA. And we have a number of proposals that the Parks Department had put forward relative to upgrades to the Eau Claire Dalzell Plain Park and Eastgate flooring that will be considered on the 8th. We have a $211 million budget plus a capital improvement plan. It's a budget that basically is a status quo budget in many ways. And with that, I think we can move on to the public comments. First of all, and then before I do that, I want to thank the administrator, deputy administrator, finance staff, and all the staff that worked on the budget. They spent a lot of time and effort on trying to bring it in and address the needs, and thank the standing committees for their involvement in the process. This is the first time we tried that participatory role. We can do things better, but it was better than in the past. So thank you.
Okay, next we'll have the clerk provide the reading of the public notice for the proposed 2024 budget.
Residents and taxpayers will take notice that the Marathon County Board of Supervisors has arranged for a public hearing on the 2024 tentative budget to be held in the Marathon County Assembly Room at the Marathon County Courthouse, Wausau, Wisconsin. An official public hearing is scheduled for Thursday, November 2nd, 2023 at 7 p.m., with final approval on Tuesday, November 9th, 2023 at 7 p.m. The public hearing will be for the benefit of Marathon County taxpayers who desire to be heard. The following is a summary of the 2024 budget. Public inspection of the detailed report may take place at the office of the county clerk. Proposed for 2024, tax levy is $57,954,347. Mill rate is $3.99 per thousand. Equalized value is $14,512,194,600.
Thank you. And now we will proceed to receive public comment on the proposed 2024 budget. But before I do, I'd like to make a few announcements. First off, we have 20 individuals that have signed up to comment on the budget. And please refrain from any personal attacks on any individuals and direct your comments to the chair. Again, if somebody has already stated your position, by all means, feel free to recognize that individual as part of your same agreement and try to be respectful of people's time. So with that, we'll start with the first person that is called in and signed up, and that is Lucille Harvey. So we use the mic up here, please, up in the front. Move it this way a little bit so they can.
Thank you. I'm Lucille Harvey, and I am a happy resident of the town of Stikine.
Lucille, please could you turn and direct your comments towards the chair, per
Toward the
decorum? Yeah, towards the chairman. Thank you.
Well, there you are.
Thank you. Thank you, please. Please
Okay.
go ahead.
I'm a happy resident of the town of Stikine. And one thing I did recently was to buy a book. And I thought, why did I buy a book and spend $20? Because not everybody can afford to do that. And then I bought a newspaper for $3. And I thought, those two things I could have gotten at our wonderful libraries. Throughout our county, we have wonderful libraries. And my granddaughter was a beneficiary of a library system. And she is now 13. So I thought I'd give you a 13-year-old's perspective on libraries. She is very happy that she has learned many things through volunteering at libraries. And she has learned how to do fundraisers for libraries. And she's been involved in libraries since she was a little bitty sit-on-your-lap person. But she said, don't forget the expense that goes with the maintenance of libraries and staffing, the staff that you have to have, the books that you have to repair, the books that get lost. She said there are many expenses to libraries that people might not notice when they just think libraries just acquire things. So her recommendation is that we continue to have this place where young people can safely gather, where people can look for jobs, and where internet, I see a lot of people using technology here. It's so important that our young people have access to high-speed internet so they can be competitive. So, after studying the budget for the library, I see that the library director and her staff and the library committee and Lance Leonard, or however you pronounce his name, and he's absent tonight, I see. Oh, are you? Okay. Okay, so I was impressed that you all worked on the budget together, and you came up with the plan to maintain a $300,000 fund in that account. I commend that. I support that. and I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Beth Martin. Beth, please, followed. Next, following Beth would be Carrie Sweeney. Beth, please.
I wish to, do I have to say my name?
You can, please.
Okay, my name is Beth Martin and I live in the city of Wausau. I wish to address the board concerning the Marathon County Public Library budget. Like many other residents, I view the service that the headquarters library and the 8 branches provide as essential. I have no interest in saving a few dollars on my property tax bill if it means that I would be putting this resource at risk. The library is one of the last places that people can go where they are not expected to buy anything. The amazing programming continually changes to meet the needs of the community. I won't take time to go into detail today about the things that the library provides. You can get a pretty good idea by checking out their website. There were some books that went through a reconsideration process in the past year because some citizens objected to the contents of the books. After a lengthy, considered process, following library policy, the books were ultimately retained as part of the collection. Some members of this board publicly stated that they intended to punish the library financially because they didn't like the outcome of the process. The board also refused to reappoint people to the library board because these library board members affirmed the conclusions of the reconsideration committee. That is not the way that I expect my public officials to behave. This board proceeded to entertain an amendment to cut the 2023 library budget by $300,000. Thankfully, that was amended to $69,000, but the library budget was cut and the motivation for the cut is not a secret. Anyone can listen to the public comments of members of this board if they are in doubt. Leo Giordano has submitted a budget to this body for 2024 with an increase of only about 1%. I think that is well within the fiscal responsibility set for each department. I request that not only you accept her budget proposal as is, but that you restore the $69,000 budget cut from last year. If there are calls for cuts to the library budget again this year, many will view that as continued punishment. Not only is that not the right thing to do, it's also illegal. This board was warned by attorneys from Van Briesen and Roper in the January 23rd report that removing books based solely upon content and viewpoint violates the First Amendment. Similarly, deciding to reduce library funding based on MCPL's refusal to remove books challenged based on content and viewpoint also violates the First Amendment. I request that you not only fund the MCPL budget as submitted, including any maintenance to the HVAC system, but that you also restore the $69,000 cut from last year to protect the county from a possible lawsuit. As a taxpayer, I do not want my tax dollars used to fund both sides of a lawsuit over First Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, please. Carrie Sweeney, please.
Hi, my name is Carrie Sweeney, and I have lived in Marathon County for 20 years. I've also been serving on the Marathon County Public Library Board since 2018, and I'm currently serving as their board president. I believe that approving full funding as requested is the most yielding investment this body can make. Marathon County Public Libraries are critical and indispensable in providing services to county residents and communities who depend on us to help them be healthy, connected, productive, and well-informed. The Marathon County Public Library is more than its headquarters in Wausau. Its 8 branches in Athens, Edgar, Hatley, Marathon City, Mosinee, Rothschild, Spencer, and Stratford are essential in providing access to our rural communities. While Marathon County Public Library checked out nearly 1 million items last year to tens of thousands of active library users, services go beyond books and story times. Additional services include internet access and Wi-Fi hotspots to rural and socioeconomically disadvantaged citizens, passport services, notary public, career connections, early literacy programs, and homebound services, to name a few. It's been alluded that the library is asking for a 12% increase. In actuality, we are requesting a nearly identical request compared to last year. The disparity comes from the previous year's cuts that would not have been sustainable without backfilling from our reserve funds. Now that the library no longer has a reserve fund surplus, and now that the budget has been pared down as tightly as possible, any additional cut beyond the $61,000 would be detrimental to the library's ability to maintain current library services to Marathon County residents. I ask for your best consideration as you move forward in this budget process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lindsay Nevitt. Lindsay Nevitt, please. Please.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I'm a resident of Rib Mountain. I'm a freelance editor and a mom of a 7-year-old. My comments will fully support the funding of Marathon County Library budget as it is, as well as debate the integrity of regulating public access to information. Defunding and dismantling the current library system would guarantee that some of the offerings and branches would cease to exist. In a study done by Pew Research Center in Washington, D.C., 2/3 of Americans said that closing their local library would greatly impact their families. Libraries have documented economic value for its citizens and neighboring property values. Literacy measures have been directly correlated to socioeconomic growth. A library is an essential resource, particularly for those who are disabled, those who are unemployed, retired, or looking for a job, and internet users without home access. Rural communities, of which our county has many, would particularly suffer from branch and service dissolution. This kind of equal opportunity, equal access to information, is a pillar of democracy. Protection of free thinking was literally one of our Constitution's first laws. Thousands of people sailed across an ocean and fought a war in their own backyards to be able to have and express ideas without retaliation. It's the very First Amendment that says the government can't regulate the exercise of words, publication, meeting, worship, or petition. There are no caveats. The word value shows up a lot in this debate. You and I may not agree about what those values should be, but it should be irrelevant. Citizens of our country, our state, our county have a right to say, write, sing, dance, have a club for whatever they want. That doesn't mean we all have to be exposed to all of it. That's the great thing about the First Amendment. Freedom of ideas is reciprocal. You have a right and a responsibility to manage what you and your family take in. You have a right to believe and participate in whatever you want or don't want. But so do I. So do all of our neighbors. Regulating library contents or defunding the library because it won't regulate the contents according to a specific set of morals or values violates our Constitution's clear protection of free expression and will set our community on a path of further discord and socioeconomic decline. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Valerie Johnson. Valerie, please.
Hello. My name is Valerie Johnson. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I believe that the Marathon County Library System is a vital part of our community. It offers meeting space, children's programs, and educational opportunities, in addition to the obvious literary information and reading adventures it houses. As a young mom, these programs and spaces were so important to my and my children's well-being. They gave us a sense of belonging and provided an important social outlet for us. With library funding cuts, these programs would definitely be in danger of disappearing. The budget cuts certainly seem related to the recent library content discussions, and if that's true, I find that retaliatory and disappointing. I accompany my kids when we are at the library. Of course, there are books that I prefer they gravitate toward, but I do not want the other books removed. That takes away my ability to have a discussion with my kids, to discuss what we believe as a family and why we feel that way. When my kids ask about a topic, I frequently tell them what I believe, but I also discuss what others believe. There are policies and guidelines in place for book approval at both a national and local library level. There are processes. Books that I purchase for my kids at home are ones that I believe in and follow my values. Books that the library has should represent everyone. I don't think that everyone needs to believe what I do, and vice versa. But don't take away the other perspective. We should not want that. The library is a place for representation, for history, and for research. I suspect that the library has books that I don't agree with, and that's okay. I trust in my ability to parent, to navigate the complexities of our society, and to keep an open level of dialogue with my kids. What are we so afraid of when it comes to the library? That kids may turn to reading instead of video games and social media? Let's all hope that our community should be so lucky. I would much rather my kids have access to an unfiltered library than an unfiltered internet. Please take the opportunity and fully support the library financially and structurally. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Jay Caldwell. Jay, please.
Hi, thank you. I'm Jay Caldwell. My wife and I were residents of Rothschild growing up, and we raised our 3 kids in Wausau, and we have 2 granddaughters going to the Wausau East schools. We've been here a long time, as evidenced by my lack of hair on the top and silver on the sides, or white. So I find that people can maybe find agreement around goals, and I think most people have very, very similar goals. They want safety, security, opportunity, health for themselves and their families and friends and other citizens of their communities. We want to be treated with respect. We treat one another as we would want to be treated ourselves. And people recognize that collaboration and cooperation with other communities can bring efficiency and opportunity that otherwise would not be there. Parents want to be responsible for their own children and not have others, or certainly the government, interfere with their child rearing. Parents want their children to understand themselves and the world, to develop critical thinking skills so they can understand the world as it quickly changes. They want their children to effectively use resources around them. Well-functioning communities take pride in their environment: roads, schools, parks, law enforcement, businesses, opportunities for recreation and cultural enrichment, and their libraries. We look for opportunities to fund our infrastructure, such as the American Rescue Act, so that we can have functioning buildings without increasing our tax burdens. We really need stable, compassionate communities, as we are entering a time of great change that is stressing our communities. One of the most destabilizing forces is misinformation or disinformation. We have a responsibility to be informed from credible sources. We're entering an age where it'll be increasingly difficult to discern what is true. The power of artificial intelligence has the potential to destabilize society so much that some people, even those involved with the development of AI, believe it is very possible that AI can lead to the extinction of the human race. In times like these, we need credible, vetted information readily available to all members of our communities. History has shown that restricting high-quality information and literature paves the way for authoritarianism. We need efficient, effective, and professionally staffed libraries. Please fully fund our county library system and trust these professionals to provide appropriate, accurate, and verified information, as well as cultural enrichment to our citizens. And leave the parenting to the parents.
Next, we have Sonia Aaman. Sonia, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sonia Aaman. I've lived in Marathon County for 39 years. I was a county employee for 22 of those years as children's librarian at the Marathon County Public Library. I speak to you today to urge you to recognize that library services are an essential service for the residents of this county. Quite possibly, you all have heard a version of this quote: "Those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it." I'd like to tell you just a little bit about the history of how this library consortium came to be and why it makes economic and logical sense to exist under the governance of the county. Once there were two organizations that served the people of the county, the Wausau Public Library and the Marathon County Library. This county library ran the bookmobiles and the branches throughout the rural areas. Eventually, the area housing the county library had inadequate space for staff and materials. Patrons came to use the Wausau Library from the rural areas because the collections were greater and the hours were more convenient. After studying the issues and the pros and the cons, the two entities merged in 1974 into one consolidated library system. The Marathon County Public Library has a nearly 50-year history of collaborating with communities, sharing resources, and providing opportunities for all ages to learn and grow. Any talk of dismantling the system and go back in history to duplicate books, movies, reference materials, staff, and many of the other behind-the-scenes organizational structures would be a waste of tax dollars. The Wausau Public Library received the Library of the Year award from the Wisconsin Library Association in 1965 and again in 1997 as the Marathon County Public Library. We have a proud and rich library history. Please keep this tradition alive and vibrant for the current and future residents of Marathon County. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Annie Leonoff.
So it's actually Amy Leonoff.
Oh, I'm sorry, Amy. Sorry.
And I am a Wausau resident. So I am also here to speak in favor of fully funding our county's public library system. I have an 88-year-old aunt that is homebound and visually impaired that utilizes the library system to get audiobooks. I myself check out audiobooks regularly for when I work on the road. When my niece was little, we checked out books every week for her. We attended story time. I just recently got a passport through the library. There are a lot of essential services, and other people have mentioned those as well. So it's my understanding that some of the board members want to completely defund and dismantle the public library system. I have no doubt this would severely impact the many services and programs the libraries offer and eventually lead to closure of the rural libraries. I expect this proposal will be about as popular as hemorrhoids. Spring elections are less than 6 months away, and I am absolutely positive that the library is more popular than any person in this room. It's time to stop pouting over failed attempts at book banning or book rating systems or whatever guise you put it under, and do the right thing. Please fund the library at their requested level for 2024, including restoration of the almost $70,000 cut last year and any reasonable increase over 2022 funding.
Thank you. Next, we have Patrick Bacher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Patrick Bacher, and I'm a resident of Wausau. I, too, support full funding for the Marathon County Library System. The Marathon County Library System has been providing free library services to our community since 1907, starting in Wausau and then branching out to serve Athens, Edgar, Hatley, Marathon City, Mosinee, Rothschild, Spencer, and Stratford. 100 years ago, Wisconsin towns and cities prided themselves on building community resources and institutions to benefit their citizens. Honestly, I can't believe I'm here tonight in 2023 to defend what is probably the most basic of institutions that define a community, a county, and a civilization. Others tonight have addressed how vital the library system is in our county. I would be interested to know if the board members making this decision are even familiar with our precious resource. Our community needs the Marathon County Library System. Marathon County is failing at attracting and retaining young professionals in all areas of employment growth. Who might want to live or move to a community without a library? The answer to that question is absolutely no one. This board in particular is known for making decisions that strive to keep our community in the dark ages. Please don't cut funding to the Marathon County Library System. Cutting funding to the library seems petty and punitive, as some board members had failed attempts at book banning. I ask the board to reconsider a move to diminish funding to a valuable Marathon County resource. Please listen to those who support and appreciate our beloved library system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeff Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I'd just like to say I'm not going to say anything about the library, except that I fully support every speaker who's come before me, and I hope that the board does consider restoring funding to prior levels and continuing it in perpetuity. It's a valuable resource for all of the reasons that have been listed prior to my getting up here. Primarily, though, I wanted to speak about something that Supervisor Robinson alluded to, that there is a surplus in the, I can't remember the name of the fund, but there is a surplus that the board is considering using to pay down, make a one-time payment with one-time money to pay down a debt on the healthcare center project. I would suggest it would be a much better use of that money to invest it in the infrastructure, specifically our roads and highway system. As you know, our GTA, the funding we receive from the state of Wisconsin to finance our road construction and upkeep and bridge replacement and all of that structure, all that infrastructure investment, has been dropping. The amount that we receive from the state and GTA has been going down, and our highway department and CIP have done a tremendous job doing more with less. But if we keep spending less, we will keep receiving less. It would be a wise investment to take that surplus money, invest it in any number of road projects which are out there waiting to be done, just waiting for the funds to get them done, which would not only immediately improve the quality of life for the people who use those roads, improve commerce, everything. I mean, it's just an upgrade for everybody. Secondly, it would increase the funding we would receive back from the state. And it wouldn't just increase it for 1 year. As you know, the state of Wisconsin uses a 6-year rolling average. So that investment would pay dividends over the next 6 years and would really be a wise investment for the county. So I hope that under your stewardship, Mr. Chair, that you could convince the board that it would be a good idea to invest that money, which would bring a much greater return and affect many more people than paying down a debt that the healthcare center is responsible for and not the county board directly. And it would have a greater positive effect on more people to invest it in infrastructure, and I hope you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kathy Garvey, excuse me. Kathy Garvey.
Hi, I'm Kathy Garvey. I've been a member of WASA and a user of the library since 1974. I think everyone has pretty much said the wonderful things about the library so far, and I think I am totally in favor of funding it. There's one thing that I don't think was mentioned, and that is what's happening with global climate change and how the library is one of those wonderful buildings in our community that allow people to go in for cooling. And also in the winter, the homeless people come in there for warming. And there's people without air conditioning in this community, and you have to take into consideration those people too. And I just returned from a meeting with the refugees that are new refugees in town, and they talked about how important the library is with the computers to try to help them get jobs and apply for jobs. So take that into consideration too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Joanne Leonard, please.
Good evening. I'm Joanne Leonard, 923 Maple Hill Road, Wausau, and thank you for the opportunity to express my thoughts regarding the 2024 county budget, and I will not mention the library. What issues are really important to taxpayers? Even though these huge budgets are complex, taxpayers look to their bottom line when the tax statement arrives. Has the board cut spending like the taxpayer has had to do? Is the county keeping them safe? Is the county protecting children? And the list goes on and on. Many of the county residents are living paycheck to paycheck. They would like to have a special fund to cover emergencies, but can barely make their monthly expenses. So why does Marathon County now have a social improvement fund, which was actually a new name for my past for social services that has accumulated $14 million over the last 10 years and is growing at $3 million per year over the last 3 years? I'm supporting Supervisor Baker's amendment, which hasn't been introduced tonight, to reduce 2024 tax levy by $1.5 million, which would reduce the tax levy for the taxpayer. It appears to me that the fund is increasing at a faster rate than expenses incurred by social services. Supervisor Baker's amendment makes a lot of sense, and from historic spending in social services will not impact services. I urge this board to support Supervisor Baker's amendment and consider giving Marathon County taxpayers a break. It is time for our local, state, and national elected bodies to start hearing from people who are paying for all the spending that is taking place. Just complaining to the neighbors isn't the answer. Second, I also support Supervisor Marshall's amendment regarding vacated buildings and their sale. There isn't time to cover all the issues, but I have studied both amendments and they are solid. Taxpayers will thank you for passing them. We are anxious to see elected officials who are taking taxpayer concerns seriously. These two amendments do just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jack Hogendijk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jack Hogendijk, City of Wausau. And I first would just like to say that I've read through Supervisor Baker's proposal to reduce by 1.5 million. And I think it's a very sound resolution, and I would urge the board to consider it and to pass that resolution. But the remarks I wanted to make tonight were about something else, and this is something I think is a way that the county could save at least $500,000 and maybe put some of that money into the library. Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that the county is going to spend roughly $580,000 of tax levy on the Nurse Family Partnership to provide essential services to about 50 women who have had a child or who are expecting. These services are no doubt important to helping women in Marathon County deliver and raise healthy children. However, this is not a mandated service by taxpayers, and it is totally unnecessary. Why? Because there is at least one agency in Marathon County that provides these very same services. I mentioned them last year. The agency is called Hope Life Center. They can serve pregnant women and new moms with all the services the county provides and several others. Excuse me. The advantages to the clients and the taxpayers is the same. It costs nothing. All of the costs involved are provided by private donors. Now, Mr. Chairman, last year when I offered this idea for these services, some objected loudly. Many claims were made about Hope that are patently false. I would like to reiterate what I said last year. Hope Life Center is a federally recognized, qualified reproductive health care provider. They operate within the law under the supervision of a medical director, a medical doctor. All of their services, their medical services, are provided by Bachelor of Science registered nurses. Again, all of the services are offered free of charge to any woman, and the dad as well, who comes in or calls for services. Those services include pregnancy tests, limited OB ultrasounds, STD testing and treatment, peer counseling on health and nutrition, parenting skills, coping skills. All of them are also, they provide free diapers, baby wipes, clothing, and car seats. And again, free of charge. They do not judge, and they will not serve, and they will serve any client regardless of their race, orientation, their religion, or lack thereof. Do they offer them a prayer and encouragement? Well, yes, they do. But the clients are not required to accept it. They will be served all the same. I'm not here to ask for a contract or even a referral, Mr. Chairman. I'm simply here to tell you that if the county were to discontinue nurse-family partnership services, Hope would be there, as they have been for the last 20 years, to provide all of those services to any woman in the county or the surrounding area who needs them, free of charge. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next, we have Laverne Rondo.
Chairman, my name is Laverne Rondo. I live at 5403 JM Place in Weston, Wisconsin. This is going to be quick. I just want to say that I support Supervisor Baker's amendment to use the $1.5 million in excess funds to help reduce the debt, simply because I think it would help the taxpayers, and I believe that the debt is large, and anything that would help the taxpayers is important to all of us. I also support Supervisor Marshall's amendment to sell the buildings that were vacated upon the movement, or the move rather, to North Central Campus. And I believe that if we make our decisions based on common sense, which all of us should do, and if the end goal is to save the taxpayers money, then I believe that all of us and all of the people on this board should support those two amendments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Patrick Rondo. Patricia. Sorry. I'll blame the clerk for the way she wrote your name. No, that was my bad. Sorry about that, Patricia. I apologize.
That's quite all right. Patricia Rondo from Cronenwetter, and I better put my glasses on. Oops. It says, as a Marathon County taxpayer, I'm all in favor of putting our tax money to good use. I think everybody in the room would agree with that. I am supportive of the Baker amendment to reduce the budget by $1.5 million to reduce the debt. And I think previous speakers have told all the history of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Next, we have Dixie Terrell Wilhite.
I am Dixie Terrell Wilhite, a resident of Wausau. I want to speak in favor of fully funding the Marathon County Library budget. It has a critical role in the community. First of all, it provides free, let me repeat that, free access to knowledge and ideas. It also lets people learn how, especially young kids and teenagers, how to research other than using Google keywords. It has a lot of different programs for children, teens, adults, community members. And the system works because of economies of scale. Individual libraries would not be able to do as much with the same dollars. that one library system can do. And it's just too important of a community resource to become a political football. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tom Johansson. Sturgeon.
Good evening. I'm Tom Johansson, and I am here to speak about fully funding the library. Marathon County Public Library is a wonderful asset to the people of this county. People of different backgrounds, different cultures, different beliefs, different ways of life, and different needs. The mission and the guiding principles of the library are very well written to enrich lives by promoting lifelong learning and providing the community with access to ideas, information, and opportunities to connect. Their guiding principles are to enhance literacy and provide equitable access to people of this community. Their vision contends that a democratic and informed society must have free and equal access to information, and to promote diversity, they will welcome and value people with different perspectives and experiences. There have been whisperings from the County Board of proposals to withhold needed upgrades to buildings, limiting funding for the library system, and even breaking up the Marathon County library system as responses to concerns of certain books being in the library. Any of these actions are inconceivable acts. It would cause the library to fail to meet their vision to providing free and equal access to information. Doing so would also restrict library access to many who have limited access to information because of economic need. Any limitation of services would principally be an act of prejudice against people of lower income and economic need. It is not the role of the county board to determine which books can be read and which cannot. Doing so is essentially an act of propaganda in its purest form. Values and morals are not the same for all people in the community. For you to impose restrictions on literature based solely on your personal values goes far beyond your roles and responsibilities as county supervisors. The library has a fair and detailed process for selection and review of literature based on the core mission, the needs of the community, reviews of the literature, and the literary value of the book or media. The library is here for all people, people of different backgrounds, different beliefs, different ways of life, different customs, and different needs. I'm asking that you respect the needs of all people in this community by supporting the library both financially and verbally. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have David Sturgeon.
Hello, David Sturgeon from Weston, and probably the fourth youngest person in this room tonight. I came from Grand Rapids, Michigan. When I moved to Wausau for a job, I was blown away at what the library had access to and how good it was. On comparison with a much more populated city in a different state. So, blows my mind when I read in a local news outlet about how some of the supervisors on this board are looking at cutting a budget to our library or withholding funds, not because they don't do their job well or any other reason. It's they didn't ban a book fast enough. The problem I have is if parents don't want their children to read certain books, then don't let them read the books. It is not the government's job to tell people what they can and can't read. And I'm sure some of those people quote 1984 on a regular basis. I've read it twice, seen the movie's better. But I can't stand to watch as this board talks about increasing funds for different things while threatening to withhold library funds. And or even better yet, abolish it and leave it to cities to handle. If we want to pass things off, What's to do with other government programs? Should we put strings on everything? Originally, Supervisor Robinson mentioned an increase to the Sheriff's Department, for instance. Are there going to be strings attached to that, or no? So if we're not going to do it for that, why would we do it for an educational system? Why don't we fund our schools and libraries the same way we do police? Or is this just a power play? If Supervisor Bacher is worried about what books are available at the library, then maybe he should be joining his children when they check the book out. I think they need him to sign up for the card anyway. And that's my time.
Thank you. And next we have Mary Hoffman, please.
Hi there. I'm for fully funding the library. I have the time to come here and express my opinions, and I try to keep myself aware of political issues that will affect me. The general public, not so much. They're busy working or raising children. But the conservative Christian Republicans have organized to ban books in public libraries and in public schools. And they don't stop there. They've eliminated women's right to choose what's right for their bodies, and in many states, they limit or they deny parents' rights to choose medical options that they feel their children need. And in this state, we withhold funding, well, the Republicans in Madison withhold fundings from public colleges if they have an diversity and awareness program. And this sounds very Orwellian to me. If you don't like what's being taught in public schools or public colleges, then go to a private one. That's your choice. That's your option. That's your freedom. But don't bring your restrictions to a public institution. The public fights back with freedom of speech, but that same amendment includes freedom of religion, freedom to worship the way you want to, but not to have to be forced to swallow the tenets, laws, and ideas of another religion. And that's what's happening in this country. We need to elect officials that are more open-minded, from school boards to senators to presidents. It's going to take a while, but we can start with libraries and keeping them fully funded so that the general population can be aware of non-biased news and publications.
Thank you. Next we have Rob Hughes. Mr. Hughes.
All right. Good evening. My name's Rob Hughes. I live in Rothschild, and I'm speaking in support of the libraries. And I live 2 blocks away from the Rothschild branch. I just remember my wife and myself taking our kids to the library to get books, movies. I remember my oldest daughter, Elizabeth, getting her first library card. And I see them now, that 5th and 8th grade, and I saw with that early reading how it benefited them academically and intelligence-wise, and that's a great thing. That's personal. That's my family, how it impacted me there. I'm a teacher, and I work with special education students, and I work with at-risk special education students, and sometimes they get kicked off school grounds. And I need to find a spot in the community to help them reach graduation or help them in the academic process. And I use the public library downtown. And the staff there is amazing. Right now I'm able to get a room, and then because I go there so consistently, they know what I need, and they know I need a space, and they'll find me something. They work with me. They're really helpful as far as I'm using the public library to help get kids college and career ready, moving towards. These are people that are going to be in our community. My fear is cutting budgets, even operating off less of a budget from last year. Just like our grocery shopping for my family, something's got to go, you know? And my fear would be less staff, or maybe they close the rooms or close some rooms because they can't staff and observe. This has an impact. And like somebody had said before, the passports, I've seen that. I compete with them for a room. But libraries are a public service. Libraries are a public good. I'm asking you to not cut the library budget because it would be detrimental to our kids. And also my wife, she's a teacher also she goes there and gets books and materials for school. I do it too for my job also. And you can order books too. It's awesome. Anyway, thinking of grocery shopping, we all have budgets and we try to operate within our budget. And the library, when I'm hearing that like frozen and then maybe even cut, and I just think about the reality of inflation, and if we look at gas, right now it's on the way down, but it's going to go back up. And we look at grocery shopping, the costs, and then we're trying to operate a building and a public service and a public good, but we're cutting the funding. And this is beneficial to it. When you drive by the library, you see people are using these facilities. In Rothschild too, you see people are using these facilities. My fear is that when I need to get a room to help a student, will there be less staff or less help, or will the rooms be closed? My bigger fear for our community, should they close branches or reduce staff? My fear, I love my Rothschild branch too. My fear is my kids, I saw benefit. I know they benefited from getting books when they were young. But if branches are closed or if services are cut, hours or whatever it might be, how is that going to have an impact on future generations? Crazy, not said tonight, but I would like you to fully fund the library and maybe give a little more, you know? But libraries are good. Libraries do a lot of different things. And I personally have benefited my family and then professionally for my job trying to help get these kids in our community to graduation. It's a good thing. So it breaks my heart that we're talking about, HVAC and cutting and things like that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That was all that we had that had signed up. Now, because this is a public hearing on the budget, I'd open it up to anybody else who wishes to address the board on the budget. Just please announce your name and the municipality that you live in.
Hi, my name is Nicole Riggs, and I live in Marathon City.
Can you?
My name is Nicole Riggs, and I live in Marathon City. There was something that I just wanted to say that nobody had said about the library, and that is, at one point, as a single mom, my daughter had a learning disability, and she was really struggling in school to read, and I could not afford to buy her more and more books for us to practice reading every night. And the library was such a great resource. She was very frustrated with reading, and so we were able to find different types of books that actually interested her. And now she's a voracious reader, and it was all due to the library that we had access to this wonderful resource, that we could try to find subjects that entertained her and inspired her to continue to read. So I would hate for the community to lose such a resource, especially for the parents that just can't afford to buy different books every week. And the students have access to changing out books and learning about all different kinds of things. They get to travel. It's not just fiction, there's nonfiction. DVDs. It's just for those little kids, especially with the ones with learning disabilities, it's an amazing, amazing resource. So I support funding the library as well.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board on the 2024 proposed budget? Please.
I'm Stephen Reiner. I live in Wausau, Wisconsin. And I participated in a meeting at Good Shepherd Lutheran Church discussing organizations in the community that we can serve. One of the speakers there discussed volunteering at the Marathon County Public Library. And since I have some difficulty reading small print books, I've taken out large print books, which nobody has mentioned yet, which I'm grateful that there are a large number of them that I can read. Throughout the years, I've taken out a large number of books, got assistance with learning how to better use my computer, and music books, recordings, and I get copied materials that I can't get at home. The librarians that I worked with were immensely helpful. When I decided to volunteer at the library, I took out the brochure, and you've seen them mention a lot of different things already, and I don't think I need to do that. But they listed in this is called the Marathon County Public Library Services, and there's a huge number of things that I didn't even know about. And I was surprised how many services we all have available to our community. As you can see with all these services and the great staff that we have, the county board should do everything in their power to fully fund this wonderful community organization. And let me say at the end here by saying that we are so lucky to have the Children's Library. If you have young kids, you can ask for help. Having the librarians available in help in choosing books, they are a real antidote to the internet's monopoly on our kids. So I repeat, we are so lucky to have the Marathon County Public Library. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board on the proposed 2024 budget? Anyone additional? Okay. Seeing none, I will then now declare the closing of the public hearing, and we will move on with the board's discussion and the board's discussion on items of the agenda that will be taken up. We will start with item number C, discussion. Item C12, and that's discussion by the board members regarding the 2024 budget. Any discussion? Any discussion? Supervisor Bacher, please. Supervisor Baker, you might be on mute, please.
Thank you. So I want to thank all the people who came and spoke this evening. I know before I was elected on the board, I appreciated the opportunity to come and express my opinion to the board. I would like to say that the two resolutions, or the one resolution regarding the library that I'm aware of, is not a cut, but rather a 6.7% increase. So basically the two options under consideration are increasing the tax levy for the library by 6.7% or increasing the tax levy for the library by 12%. So neither of those are a cut. They both options fully provide for the full funding of the budget in a little bit different way, but there is, quite a bit of information out there from what I've been told. I haven't read it personally, that is somewhat misleading. So the two options that I'm aware of, and I don't, know what other supervisors are doing, but two options I'm aware of both increase the budget, one by 12%, one by 6.7%. Thank you.
Other discussion? Other discussion? Okay, we will move on to item number D, education presentation report, standing committee chairpersons or designees. Any standing committee chairpersons or designees? Okay, we'll move on to education and discussion regarding agenda items for the Thursday, November 9th, 2023 meeting. Under ordinances E14, E14A, rezones from the town of Rib Falls, Tim Vreeland for Maynard Matthey, ordinance 38-23. Any discussion? Okay, moving on to item E14B, the town of Gunther rezone Matthew Hoff, ordinance 0-39-23. Any discussion? Next we have item E14C, town of Hall rezone Tim Vreeland on behalf of Mitch Gums, 0-40-23. Item E14D, town of Plover rezone, Jason Fluger for Bradley Krieger. Ordinance 41-23. Any questions? Okay, moving to item E14E from the town of Reed, a rezone. Michael and Janice Kleeman for Chris and Crystal Kleeman. Ordinance 0-42-23. Moving on to item E14F, Town of Plover rezone, Marathon County Parks, Rec, and Forestry for Mickey Family Trust. Ordinance 0-43-23. Any questions? Okay, moving on to resolutions from the County Board of Supervisors. Change in supervisory district boundaries resulting from Village of Weston annexation. Resolution 56-23. Moving on from the Environmental Resources Committee. Item E15B1. Town of Ringgold Local Zoning Ordinance Amendment, Section 13, Resolution 57-23. Moving on to item E15B2, Town of Ringgold Local Zoning Ordinance Amendment, Section 11.03, Parent 7, Resolution 58-23. Questions? And moving on to item E15B3, Town of Ringgold Local Zoning Ordinance Amendment, Section 4.08, Parent 3, Resolution 59-23. Any discussion? Moving on to item E15C from the Transportation Coordinating Committee and Health and Human Services Committee. Item E15C1, approval of the 2024 85.21 code section elderly and disabled transportation grant application, resolution 60-23. Any discussion? Okay, from item E15D, Health and Human Services Committee. Item E15D1, a resolution supporting Senate Bill 328, Healthcare Transparency, Resolution 61-23. Okay, moving on from item E15E from the Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee. Item E15E1, the 2024 Budget, Property and Tax Levy Resolution, Resolution 62-23. Any discussion? Supervisor Sandulski.
So I got a question in relation to the in the $50,000 contingent fund for the HR Finance Committee. So in the past, has this ever happened? Has a contingent fund been given to the HR Finance to basically do whatever they please, kind of without the approval of the board? Is what I understand. This is kind of like a slush fund for them, is the way I'm looking at it. And my second question is what are the intentions to spend this 50 grand on in the HR Finance? That's all I have to ask. Thank you.
Supervisor, the HR Finance Committee Chair, Supervisor Robinson, please.
The $50,000 fund has been a historic fund that's been set aside for emergencies on the part of the, to deal with emergencies. I think it's been used once in the last 5 years, and that dealt with some issues that we had at Marathon Park, a $30,000 expenditure. But what it does is it creates an option to deal with things on a quick basis. So it's not. It's part of the $50,000 of the contingency is set aside for the Finance Committee should we have those emergencies to use. We haven't used the contingency fund in general much in the last few years. Because we've been, budgeting better and trying to transfer internally to the budgets. In the past, we've used it for if we have a lot of juries in excess, jury duty, and occasionally we'll have some other expenditures. But generally speaking, I asked Christy Palmer to prepare something. I'll send it out to all the members relative to a summary of what we've spent that money in the last 50 years. But it's not a slush fund. It is an emergency fund that by which the county board or the Human Resources Finance Property Committee can deal with things that have a critical short-term turnaround in need. And it's not been abused and not been used much.
And it's historically been there since I've gotten on the board. That was 18 years ago. Any other discussion? Supervisor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what happens to that $50,000 that's allocated? Is that rolled over? Is that it grows in that fund?
No. The amount is part of the total overall contingency fund. As with any fund, at the end of the year, if it is not utilized after the audit, those by our own policy rolls over into the CIP. So it does not accumulate. Supervisor Robinson? Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, we're moving on to item E15F, Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee. Item E15F1, establish the salaries for the county board supervisors for the 2024-2025 term. Resolution R-64-23. Any discussion? Supervisor Dickinson, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out I believe there's an error on the third line, Supervisor Robinson's.
That was caught in HR Finance, and it'll be corrected on the correct. Any discussion? Okay, from item E, 15G, from the Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee and Infrastructure Committee, item E, 15G1, a resolution supporting applications to Public Service Commission for broadband expansion, resolution 63-23. And action will be taken on this item tonight. Supervisor Robinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have we been able to put that in the packet?
No, but it was emailed to everyone.
All right. I apologize. We're working very last minute on trying to assist internet service providers who are looking to expand broadband in Marathon County. And next Tuesday, November 7th, there's a deadline for submitting applications for the Capital Projects Broadband Grant Program administered through the Public Service Commission. By way of background, the Broadband Task Force has been looking at trying to partner with those internet service providers for a few years. In the last 2 years, we made more progress than the last 15. The proposals before you today, we have actually 5 separate projects that are before us that have come in from Frontier and from Charter. And again, we can't provide the last mile, the service to the home. We have to rely and work with internet service providers. In the case of Frontier, they've got 3 projects, one in the village of Maine, one in Emmett, and one in Spencer, the town of Spencer. Charter Communications has also put together 2 projects. One project deals with Rib Falls, Reeprock, Ween, and a portion of Castle. And then they would deal with, the second project deals with Spencer, McMillan, Day, and a portion of Green Valley. In terms of numbers, the Frontiers 3 projects would serve about 868 individuals, and the Reeprock, Rib Falls, Ween proposal would serve a little over 2,000 or approximately 2,600, and then the Spencer, McMillan, Day project would serve 2018. We've been asked to partner with them, and in the past we have partnered with other internet service providers, and on average since 2020 we've provided about $108 per passing or crossing subsidy. Charter's request is they have indicated that they're willing to pay 52% of the project costs. They're looking for a subsidy between the Public Service Commission and the county of 48%. Frontier's rates are much higher. They're in the 76 to 82% subsidy rate, which will impact their ability to receive funding through the PSC. The Broadband Task Force supports all the projects. Even though there's a little bit of overlap in the town of Spencer, we'll defer to the Public Service Commission in addressing and reconciling which one is best for the county. But the Broadband Task Force recommended funding at $100 per crossing and there is some redundancy for those projects, and that funding coming out of the ARPA funds. When we initially allocated ARPA funds, we set aside $3 million for broadband expansion in the county. We scaled that back last year or earlier this year because we hadn't spent it, and we were concerned that if we didn't spend it, we would lose it. We only committed about 1.2 to 1.3 million of that 3 million. This is a request for about 450. We've had the numbers are swirling. I keep getting emails, and I've had about 7-8 emails since we started this meeting tonight from the providers. So until Tuesday, we can't give you all of the details on it, but that's their deadline for getting in. But we're asking the county board to support pledging $100 per crossing to a successful applicant. And we reimburse them for their expenses. We don't front the money, but we rather reimburse it. The areas served were areas that were originally designated for a Rural Digital Opportunity Fund award through the FCC's program. LTD Broadband out of Minnesota went into a reverse auction. They said that they bid down. They said, with this level of subsidy, we can provide these services. And they were the lowest bidder, required the least amount of the subsidy. Nationwide, LTD was awarded $1.3 billion worth of projects. FCC was concerned about their ability to do the work after an initial approval. They rescinded that approval. Unfortunately, those areas, those towns, and there are several other towns out there, lost the opportunity to apply for funds through the Public Service Commission and through ARPA funds. So they've been disadvantaged and without service. These are unserved, underserved areas in the county. And this proposal before you today commits, again, the up to, but not to exceed, $495,100 based upon the number of units served. This has been before, it's been unanimously approved at the Broadband Task Force, Infrastructure, Human Resources and Finance, Property. There's a minor edits to the version that went to Infrastructure earlier today to reflect the changes in the technical changes in how we can spend the money in terms of the citation relative to the section of the U.S. Department of Treasury's resolutions. But this goes a long way. Currently, we've estimated that about 15,000 residents are unserved or underserved. This deals with approximately a third of that if they're successful. Again, 42 million, we're not going to get all of these projects funded. Last time there was a solicitation, there was 125 million available statewide. There was $500+ million worth of requests. If we get one or two projects funded, it would be wonderful. And it's in the resolutions up. So I think the resolution was emailed to all of you earlier tonight, and again, we apologize. We were going to meet last week. We didn't have enough details. We were scheduled for Monday at the Broadband Task Force. We had technical difficulties of accessing it, so they met yesterday, and it's just been quick. But we have to generate these letters of support and make our pledge by, Frontier's submitting their application at noon tomorrow, so we're generating letters. I think we've got a dozen for each project approximately, and trying to partner with them.
So we have a motion by Supervisor Robinson and a second by Supervisor Scherfinski and Supervisor Straub with a question. All right. Any further discussion? Excuse me, any discussion? Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. Supervisor Langenhahn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hardinger, you're on the phone. How do you vote?
Favor.
Supervisor Opal?
Aye.
Thank you. And we'll proceed. And the motion is carried and is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to announcements and/or requests. Items under miscellaneous business. Item 16. Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to give my sincere thank you to everyone in this room, people that are online, and everyone else. All the kind words, all the cards, all the emails, all the texts. People stopped by to see me when I wasn't in when I was in a robe, but I just can't tell you how much it meant to me, and I'm getting through that, and I think it was because of all the support that I got here, and my wife also, like I said, we really appreciate the support, and thank you very much. I continue to improve, and like I said, hopefully I'll be back fully in the saddle in a month or two, so thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations, and you continued well wishes as you proceed on your recovery. Any other announcements and/or requests? Okay, we have announcements. We do need signatures from Infrastructure and HR Finance. We are down to item 17. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Drabek, and wait, I'll take them on the Supervisor Covelli and Supervisor Dickinson. Supervisor Covelli with the motion, Supervisor Dickinson with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Our next meeting will be next Thursday for our regular meeting for voting and the budget.
Here's the resolution for signatures. We gotta have more than just 2 or 3 on that one.